As you've heard, I'm a physical activity researcher, so I will try to, as the CEO of National Seniors said this morning, to kind of convert that in a useful way, in some information. And yes, I wanted to say thank you to National Seniors for inviting me to talk here and to talk about physical activity and aging and active aging. It's a topic I love to talk about, so let's go. Okay, the coming 20 or so minutes, what will we be talking about? One, the definitions. What is physical activity? Exercise, sport, sedentary behavior. What is good for health? What is not good for health? How much physical activity should we be doing? And in some of the previous presentations, people already alluded to that. What should we be doing? Is something better than some kind of exercise better than another kind of exercise, or does it really not matter what should we be doing? And how? If I don't do anything and I would like to start, how do I do that? Or if I do anything and I would like to maintain, how do I do that? Okay, here we go. Have a look at the different pictures. I think some of the previous speakers alluded to vigorous housework, top left. It's coincidence, but it's in there. And think for yourself, or shout out loud if you're less shy, what is physical activity of those? Which ones represent physical activity? Oh, you're not shy at all. It's probably the lunch. I always want after lunch, but after now. So I hear different things. Basically, all of those are physical activity, except the one of the people sitting there in front of the fire, I think it is. So all of it is physical activity. Some of it is exercise. Okay. So what is physical activity? Physical activity is a bodily movement that is produced by the contraction of skeletal muscles that substantially increases energy expenditure. So we do something and it's costing us energy. And very often what we do with physical activity, we divvy it up in terms of intensity. So if we go from the left to the right, vigorous intensity is the things like running really fast. It's the thing that makes you breathe harder, you start sweating, you're not able to talk. If we talk about moderate intensity, it's the more moderate things, like a brisk walk, jogging, social tennis. You might get a bit warm, and you breathe a bit quicker. You're able to talk, but not sing. The lighter activities is more the everyday, the day-to-day activities. And then sedentary is when we're doing something, but it doesn't cost us a lot of energy. And typically what happens, we can have those activities in different domains. So we can have it in leisure time. We can have it at work, we can have it in transport. And what we do as physical activity researchers, we qualify it as metabolic equivalence, the MET value, so you can see it there. If I just sit still, or if I would be Gail and sitting there still, it's about 1 MET. So that's the amount of energy you use to do your activity. So if we go to the vigorous, it says more than 6 METs. It means you're using 6 times as much energy as just sitting still. And just for your information, sleeping is 0.9, so you use a little bit less. Running about 22 kilometers per hour is the highest MET value there is 23. So you're using 23 times the amount of energy to do your physical activity. Exercise, some of the pictures in there were exercise, but to be honest, it's really, really hard to tell which one were and which ones were not. It's planned, structured, repetitive, and purposeful in that sense that it results in improvement and maintenance of components of physical fitness. So with exercise, you've got an aim. You want to improve something. You want to train something. You want to improve your fitness. So fitness is a set of measurable physiological parameters. And it can go 2 ways. If you are regularly active, you can improve your health-related fitness. So you see that on the left-hand side. Your aerobic capacity, your strength, your endurance, your flexibility, your body compositions. This all responds really well to training. So if you're active regularly, all those things improve. You may improve your skill-related fitness, balance, agility, coordination, power, and speed. However, those are more related to genetic predisposition. So some people are just better in that than other people. So sports and elite sports people, for example, they're good in that hand side. So it increases your performance to do certain things. We're all good at that. So the things that improve health, we can all do that, and we will all benefit from that. And sport, of course, is physical activity or exercise. It can be both, but it's with a very often a competitive element, and there's a set of rules that we all agreed in to do that kind of activity. Sedentary behavior is a relatively new kid on the block, and that's defined as any waking activity characterized by an energy expenditure of less than 1.5 METs. Remember, sitting still is 1, 1.5 is probably sitting, and you can do something, but not a lot. And a sitting or reclining posture. Very often, how we use it in research, it's sitting, watching television, occupational sitting, that's not my desk, sitting in transport. I used to drive, I live in Williamstown, used to drive a car to Monash University when I worked there. I did about an hour and a half of sitting in transport every day as a physical activity researcher. Other leisure, sitting on your bike is not sitting. Sometimes we do research and people include sitting on a bike as sitting. It's not, and that's because of your energy expenditure. And this is also because I could include a picture of my lovely bike. I told you I'm Dutch, love my bike, and I don't think you have to wear lycra. Okay. Now, here we go. Tell a little bit about physical activity and health. First, about aging and health. So our life expectancy currently is about 80 years for males, and females tend to live a little bit longer. It's 84 years. And although most people aged 65 years and over say that they've got good, very good, or excellent health, the majority also has a chronic health condition. Actually, 50% of the people aged 65 to 74 years have some kind of chronic condition, and it increases to 70%, so that's the vast majority of people aged 85 years and over. So what kind of conditions are there? What you can see here, and this is information from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, is the different age groups, so 0 to 17 years, 18 to 44, 45 to 64, and 65 years and over. And you can see the different health conditions that people say they have. So if we look at the 45 to 64, for example, we can see that arthritis and related disorders are a big one that only increases with age. Back problems is a big one. Many people who have a disability say that it's caused by back problems. It decreases a little bit by age, but it's still a big one. Other physical conditions. Many people report that. And what we can see in the 65 years and over is that dementia and Alzheimer's disease comes in when we've heard about that before. The good news is, most of these conditions with high diabetes, heart disease, asthma, arthritis, the back problems, other physical conditions depending on which ones they are, and dementia and Alzheimer's disease respond well to physical activity. Very good news. Now, on the next slide, I've got the top 5 of mortality risk factors. So those are risk factors for early death, really. So before I show the slide, can you just think a little bit and think for yourself what kind of risk factors would be in there? And shout out loud if you want. You don't have to, but if you want, go for it. Sorry? Yeah, there are things in there related to heart attack. Yes. Yeah, I'm talking about physical activity, so yeah, it's in there, which are things. We should have a coffee later on. Potentially. That's why you should always see your GP before you do that, and no one should do it too quickly. Always gradual. Good one though. Okay. Number 1, and this is worldwide, number 1 is hypertension, responsible for 30% of early death. Then tobacco, then high blood glucose, there's high blood sugar. Then physical activity actually is number 4, which I find quite amazing. So this means that if we would take physical inactivity away, we would ensure that everyone does sufficient physical activity, we would prevent 6% of deaths. And then we've got overweight and obesity. I always, when I show this, I find it amazing. And then the very good news is if we look at this, if you change your physical activity, you do not only address that risk factor, but other things. You get your hypertension, because that responds well to being active. your blood sugar regulation, and you also address overweight and obesity. Now, you can't add those factors up because there is some kind of, it's interwoven to some extent, but if we would take away physical inactivity, we would prevent at least 6%, and probably up to 25, 30. It's incredible, isn't it? Okay, let's talk about health now. Very, very good news. Physical activity is good for your physical health. It's good for people's mental health and quality of life, as we just heard about the depression and anxiety. And it's also good for social health. Okay, so in terms of physical health, physical activity plays a very important role in the prevention and management of chronic conditions. Well-established, good evidence that it plays a role for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, musculoskeletal problems, and some cancers, in particular breast cancer and colon cancer. It's also very important for improving and maintaining physical function. So especially when people get older, their ability to do their activities of daily living. Simple things like you need your muscle strength to get out of a chair. Walking, carrying groceries, things like that. Their functional status. People who are regularly active have a lower risk of falling, higher bone mineral density. Excellent. Mental health and quality of life. Physical activity is essential, very important role in the prevention and management of anxiety and mild to moderate depression. And we've heard a little bit about this as well, that there's a well-established good evidence that physical activity plays a role in cognitive function. So both in people who are cognitively healthy and people with cognitive decline and dementia, those who are active have better cognitive function, as well as what we heard this morning about more connections in the hippocampus and a decreased risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. And then there's social health. You can be physically active with other people, which kind of helps to increase your social support, social connectedness, and can decrease loneliness. If there was a pill who would do all those things, I think GPs and specialists would happily prescribe it. I haven't spoken a lot about sedentary behavior, briefly touched on it. It's like sitting still for a prolonged period of time. And there's quite strong evidence now, well, that is people who sit a lot without breaking it, that there's a higher risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and mortality risk as well. So even if people do sufficient physical activity, and we'll talk about that later, those who sit a lot still have an increased risk. Okay. So what kind of activity do you need to do? What is good for health? We've got the whole range from everyday activities to serious exercise. Pick. It all works for your health. It works in different ways for different aspects of health, but it's all good. And I think I've spoken with some people during lunch who said, I will never do exercise. So the right-hand side is probably not for them. It is for some people. And I just love the picture of the swimming lady, and I also saw it on the aging quiz, but I just love the joy of her being active, and it's my favorite picture. So, how much do we need to do? There are physical activity guidelines in Australia, and some people already mentioned that before, and you can see too. So on the left-hand side is the physical activity guidelines for adults. So they've broken it up. So it's the Department of Health and Aging broken it up till adults 65 years and then 65 years and over. And those have just been updated. They've been released early 2014. Then there's the physical activity guidelines for older Australians. They're a little bit older, but fairly similar. So I will merge them in my presentation. Never wear a scarf when you're presenting, and because I just get stuck in my earring all the time. So if you see me doing things, it's because I'm stuck. Anyway, we'll just give it a little bit of room. Physical activity guidelines. For those people who are interested, the booklet on the right-hand side is available. So downstairs and upstairs where the lunch was, there's a table with information, and there's copies of that booklet available. It gives you information of how much you should ideally do for health benefits, and it gives you some tips on how to do that. Okay, the most recent guidelines for adults. Here we go. Doing any physical activity is better than doing nothing at all. So if you not do anything and you think, oh, but you know, people who are very active, it's not for me, I can't do that. Just start doing a little bit, because it will have health benefits, especially for quality of life, well-established evidence. Be active on most, preferably all days of the week. So try to do things. And this is not only your leisure time physical activity or going to the gym, this is also walking, going to the supermarket, doing things, so fit in your physical activity. Do about 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity, or 75 to 150 of vigorous, or any combination of those. So, doesn't mean you have to do it in one stint. It can be kind of in bouts of 10 minutes. They also evoke health benefits. And remember, the moderate is the one where you kind of, you know, you can still talk, but you can't sing. You're doing something, and the vigorous is the one where you're really flat out. So you can choose. There's horses for courses. Different people like different things. Do muscle strengthening activities. Very, very important for functional status as well, for doing the things of daily life. And what those guidelines also have is minimize the time spent sitting and break up long periods of sitting as much as possible. So those are the most recent ones. These are the ones for all the adults. You can read them for yourself, but they are fairly similar to the updated ones. They're less prescriptive in terms of strength training. So they say do it, but they don't say do it twice per week or more. And they don't mention the sedentary behavior. And they say here about the vigorous activity, be a little bit cautious. Do what is within your ability. So the good news, physical activity good for health. The bad news, this is the proportion of people who do sufficient physical activity for health. And you can kind of see that it decreases with age. In the people aged 65 years and over, it is about 35 to 40% who do sufficient. In the people aged 75 years and over, it's a lot less. So there's room for improvement. And I put in this slide why being active can be difficult. This is a large overview, and I'm not going into all the details. But it's not only you. It's not only you who makes a difference in deciding, I have to do more, or I should be doing more, but I'm not doing it. It is so difficult. Physical activity is a very complex behavior, and it's not only you who has an influence on it, but also interpersonal. So what you see, what happens around you, the support you have. Maybe you are a carer, and there is less time to do things. The environment plays a role. Is it safe? Are there opportunities available to be active? Is it nice and green? Are there things that you like to do? Then policy plays a role in people's physical activity behavior, and then at a global level as well. So there's all those factors that influence behavior across the life course. So it's not just you. So if you want to do something, you're not doing it, don't feel bad about yourself. It is complex. Okay, so you know how much. We're now going to talk about what a little bit. Okay, in terms of sitting time, minimize the time you spend sitting. And if you're sitting long periods of time, what we know about older Australians is sit about 9-10 hours a day. Try to break it up a little bit. Try to have regular breaks in there, because it will do you good. Moderate to vigorous intensity. On most days of the week, try to fit it in, either 150 to 300 minutes of moderate, or 75 to 150 of vigorous, or a combination. Strength training. And that can be with weights, it can be with machines, it can be with the elastic bands, it can be going to the supermarket and carrying your groceries. But do it at least twice per week. And then balance and flexibility. The idea is to fit in a little bit of that every day. So again, it can be all those things. So it may sound like a challenge to fit it all in your life, but we're doing a lot of it anyway. So be aware of that and maximize opportunities to do so. And I think how we can kind of summarize the whole thing is move more, sit less. That's a very easy takeaway message there. If you're not doing anything and you would like to do anything, for your general health, just start by doing some physical activity. Try to have a few more walks and gradually build up. So even if you're not meeting those guidelines, Doing some physical activity will do you good. It will benefit your health, and as I said, especially for quality of life. If you've got specific conditions, like you know that you've got hypertension or diabetes, it might be very good to see an exercise physiologist. An exercise physiologist is an allied healthcare professional, and they actually specialize in the delivery of physical activity and exercise options for the prevention and management of lots of those conditions. Or talk with your GP. And I wrote there, exercise is medicine, which was the slogan of the American College of Sports Medicine 2 years ago. Exercise is medicine. So for other medications, you see your GP, so why not for exercise? Okay, a few take-home messages. Doing something is better than doing nothing. Ideal to work up to those guidelines, but if you can't manage that, just start with doing something. This has been said before as well, but use it or lose it. You know, you have to keep using things, because if you sit down and you kind of give up and you don't try to do things, it will deteriorate. So try to be active in as many ways as possible. And it's never too late to start. A very, very important one, have fun. Because how else are you going to do or maintain what you're doing if you're not liking it? It can be done, but it's very difficult. So choose something you like. So I'd like to illustrate a few of those. This is the it's never too late one. So these actually were people who participated, Dutch people who participated in a study with it there. So you could start doing your flexibility exercises when you're 70, and then end up like this when you're 95. But only if you want to. There's no need to do that. It's not going to serve you any better in life for most purposes, if you can do that. So, as I said, there's horses for courses. Some people like to be more enthusiastic and fanatic about things. If that's what you want, by all means do that. If that's not what you want, do it at a little bit of a lower level. And then to conclude.
Oh, yeah. Oh. Oh. Oh.
Choose something you like and have fun. Thank you.